I'm Mike O'Donnell, and I'm running for the Secretary of State because I'm really fed up with what's going on in our state. You can probably tell from my accent that I live in eastern Colorado, so I drove in this evening through Denver's traffic, which never gets any better. I'm originally from Australia. I met my wife to be at grad school in 1987, applied legally to move to the United States. They eventually let me in 1988, and we were able to get married. Then I went through the process of getting a green card and eventually becoming a US citizen. And so for the first 10 years or so of my life in the United States, it was taxation without representation. And then I was able to become a citizen and get involved, at least in understanding politics. My 34 years here in the United States, 12 years in Kansas, and then the last 22 years here in Colorado, have all been working with small businesses, helping people start businesses, grow businesses, mentor businesses, get them access to financing, helping with economic development, helping create stronger communities through entrepreneurship and small business. So that's the perspective I'm coming at the Secretary of State's race from. A lot of people don't realize that the Secretary of State actually has two jobs in Colorado. One, it's to help businesses, it's to enhance commerce. And the second is to ensure we have election integrity. And it doesn't do either of those. If we had someone in the Secretary of State's position the last 4 years who actually understood business, we may not have destroyed the small business sector in Colorado through COVID. I'm concerned that as we move into this next recession with high inflation, unless we have someone in the executive team of the Colorado government who understands the small business ecosystem and how small businesses work, we're going to destroy the small business sector yet again over the next 2 to 3, 4 years. So part of my passion is coming at it from the business side. As a naturalized US citizen, I understand how important it is to vote and the rights and freedoms we have in this country, which we don't have in any other countries. We certainly don't have in Australia anymore anyway. So essentially, these are some of the things that I'm very passionate about. To understand the election integrity, what I've done is what you would do if you were looking at starting a business or going for a job. You'd study what goes on now. So what I did in January was I bought myself a copy of the Colorado Voter Roll, because I saw the Judicial Watch has been suing the state of Colorado to clean up its voter rolls. They've been telling the state we have the dirtiest voter rolls in the nation. Other people don't say that. Republicans and Democrats talk about how we have a wonderful system here. The Heritage Foundation thinks that there's nothing wrong with our voter roll. So I thought I'd see for myself, excuse me. So I bought myself a copy of the voter roll, and our voter roll is a real mess. As I've been going through it on my spreadsheets, I've been finding addresses that don't exist where people are voting from. I'm finding multiple people in the one house with the same name who are voting. I'm finding 9 people who live in a UPS store, not get their mail there, but they live in the UPS store and they're voting from there. I'm finding 33 people who are registered at a DMV office. 24 of them are active voters. And I bought my roll in January, so it told me that someone moved into that office in December. So I'm just curious as to how you can live in a DMV office. But what mostly I'm finding is an impossibly large number of people living in a lot of suburban houses. And to me, it's a fairly obvious issue. When we have, let's just say, 8 people living in a 3-bedroom house and they've got 2 different sets of last names, it's fairly obvious for me that someone has moved in and someone has moved out. I can go to the county assessor's office, I can see who owns the property, and many times it's that group with one of those names. The other 4 people get their ballots there too, and they are apparently voting as well. So a lot of people who get ballots at their residences will send them back. Some people will throw them in the trash, and some people will use them to vote. And we have that issue in Colorado with votes or ballots being very valuable. We do have a fair bit of ballot harvesting that goes on here in this state too. So especially as we come into a down economy with people starting to lose their jobs, perhaps we get towards the end of the year, we have high inflation, which is already out of control. We have crime that's off the charts. I even have to lock my pickup up, and I've been living in the country for about 19 years. I've never locked my car before. But now we're seeing thefts moving out along I-70, US 36 and US 34. So we see gangs coming around collecting vehicles. So these are the sorts of things that concern me as someone who's lived here now for the last 22 years. I spent 20 years with Colorado Lending Source, a mission-based nonprofit lender. We did more than 4,000 projects across the state of Colorado. We helped those businesses create more than 26,000 jobs here. I've created a character-based loan program, which the state of Colorado picked up to try and make more capital available to emerging small businesses. I run a nonprofit presently, which helps new businesses get started. So my focus is on that. For me, election integrity really starts with if you live here and you're a citizen, you earn the right to vote. But our laws are so confused. We have automatic voter registration, which means that every time you touch a DMV office, you get added to the voter roll. If you renew your driver's license and you change anything on your driver's license, see, a lot of people have mailing addresses. If you forget to put your mailing address on your driver's license for renewal, you get a new voter entry in the database, so you get an extra vote. We're finding that we don't move people off the voter roll when they do move. We rely on outside people to tell us when people are moving, which is not the way. If you look through the voter roll, it's pretty easy to see. And again, a lot of my analysis on the voter roll has been looking at, initially it was houses where there were 6 or more people living in a 3 or a 2-bedroom house, too many of those. I moved it up to 8 or more people living in a 2 or 3-bedroom house, too many of those. So now I'm up at 10 plus, and I'm finding 16 people living in a 3-bedroom house in Adams County. I'm finding some of them I find are quite funny. I shouldn't do this, but there's a little 2-bedroom trailer house in Colorado Springs where there are 9 adult males, all between ages of 31 and 61. And I can't imagine what the bathroom looks like in that. I don't know why she said it. But things like that, it just can't be. And you look at some of the Google pictures and you can see there are kids' toys in the front yards. So you know there's a lot more people. And it's a racket, it really is. From the perspective of, I could go in many different directions. There's a lot of things that I would like to introduce as part of legislation. But the key thing here in Colorado is that 43% of our voters are unaffiliated. Only 26% are Republicans. So for anyone to win a statewide office or a federal office, you actually have to get more unaffiliated voters to vote for you than you do Republicans. And so I'm coming at the position from the middle, if that's possible, and trying to work more with the unaffiliated voters, a lot of the small businesses that I've worked with over the years, a lot of the people that are interested in improving community and not just getting in the system that we have here where it's tax and spend and driving all the roads that I've done. Geez, our roads are getting worse and worse, my goodness. I've had to repair my little car because my ball joints went out better, and bring back businesses which would make our communities much, much stronger. Again, the key thing is that affiliated versus the Republicans, we really, really need to get those. And as you meet with candidates, as we get towards the primary, a good question to ask them is how are you going to get that unaffiliated vote? Because that is going to determine who's in office this next year. If we don't win the House and the Senate in Colorado, anyone who's elected as a Secretary of State will have their hands tied a little bit. There's still a lot of things that they can do, but it's really important that we take back the House and the Senate. And once we reverse the abortion bill, we need to make sure we get rid of automatic voter registration, because that is just bloating the voter roll. I'm 3 miles out there in Yuma County from the Kit Carson County line, and I don't even know if any of you know where that is. We're right on the Kansas border, and we actually have a storm going on there at the moment. But the Kit Carson County lost its large employer in 2016, a private prison. So the population of Kit Carson County has declined about 5 or 6% in the last 6 years. The number of voters in that county has increased by 8%. And we're seeing this all the way around the state where extra voters are being added, voters aren't being removed, voters are voting from places where they shouldn't be voting, and we have issues around ballot harvesting as well. So I can rattle along, but other legislation I would really want to work with the incoming House to fix is we want to bring back a bill that was actually presented this last year or this year in the House, but didn't get approval from the Democrats. What the bill would do would require any election machines we have in Colorado to meet the 2021 standards, the federal standards of security for election machines. All the machines we use in Colorado comply with the 2005 standards, when people really didn't have cell phones and security wasn't what it needs to be today. So if we bring that bill back and pass that law, We'll make sure all our machines are compliant, give counties the opportunity of whether they want to vote by hand, which in a small county is much, much less expensive, or use the machine. It's going to be up to the county, because I've met with many small counties where they've got 2,000 to 3,000 voters. They pay $15,000 a year to license the Dominion software plus the machines. And for those small counties which are losing both population and tax revenues, it's really going to cripple a lot of those counties. So the Secretary of State has been very tyrannical presently. She doesn't understand business. She's there to become the governor in 2026, and I'm sure everyone knows that that's her objective, is to be our governor in 26. So if we can stop her doing that, get the House back, reverse a lot of the legislations. I know I was over on the Western Slope there, and you probably may or may not have heard, but there have been letters to the editor in a lot of the small papers on the Western Slope asking the Democrats to change their party affiliation to unaffiliated so they can vote in the primaries to unseat Lauren Boebert. And so those are some of the tactics that are being used by people. I think we should have a moratorium of people switching affiliations between assemblies and primaries so that we don't have that in the future. And my objective would really be to clean up the voter rolls so that by 2024 and 2026, all Coloradans can agree that we have free and fair elections. Because at the present time, it's 50-50. 50% of Coloradans think that the elections suck, 50% thinks they're okay. And so we really need to have a candidate running for the Secretary of State's position who can hopefully unify the state and bring us back to common sense and sensibility. So I waffle on too much and I can keep talking for ages, but that just gives you a little bit of a flavor of what my interest is. I really want to depoliticize the office. I want to bring it back to a business office, which is what it used to be. To be honest, it should be a very, very boring office. It's just all about business and the elections, and it shouldn't be controversial. It doesn't need to be political, and that's the sort of thing that I would like to do, especially as we move into this next recession. So that's a little bit about me and my background. Again, I'm originally from Australia. My website is easy. It's mikeodonnell.us because I'm a US citizen. I don't have signs yet because I'm not a high campaign type person, but I have some buttons. So if anyone wants a button, you can stick it on your fence post or something like that, and I'll have the signs next week. But I'd be happy to answer any questions, because this shouldn't be an exciting position, and it shouldn't be someone unexciting like me should be the one that runs for it. But any thoughts? Do you all think election's good? Yes?
What's Janet Griswold's
What's her what?
What's Janet Griswold's
She doesn't understand business. She's never had a real job. She's just been an attorney. She worked for Obama, and then she worked for, I think, Hickenlooper. But again, this is a lot of the past Secretary of States had some business background, and I think it's really important. County clerks do a really good job in their communities, and they know their communities better than the Secretary of State does. So centralizing power is always a bad thing to do in government. And I shouldn't say, just my observation is just looking at the Secretary of State's resume, but she wants to be the governor in 2026. I mean, that's her objective. That's what she's wanting to be. She wants to be in charge of all of us. And I'm only 30 miles from the Kansas border, and if things get worse, I might have to... Anyway, sorry. Anyone can get the voter roll if you're interested. It's $50. Well, I think cleaning it is easy. It will be a cooperative thing between the Secretary of State's office and the county clerks. Because of some of the silly laws we have in Colorado, if someone moves out of state, the only person who can take them off the voter roll is the person who moves out of state. So it's a very, very silly rule. We should be able to allow people who've bought the house to tell someone that, hey, these people don't live here anymore, which would be simple. And again, we've got issues around, it's really easy to get a state ID or a driver's license. So we have about 10% of the population in Colorado are foreign born like I am. You don't have to prove citizenship if you want to get a license. And there's nothing in our system. The SCORE system, which is used, doesn't really pick that up. You don't even have to prove residency. If you look at the confused laws we have in Colorado, and this is another discussion, if you want to get in-state tuition, you have to live here for 12 months. You're a resident. If you want to if you want to file your taxes, the IRS says you have to be here for 6 months, and then you have to file a Colorado tax. If you want to get something, change your registration, you have to live here for 90 days, and then the DMV considers you a Colorado resident. The Secretary of State says you can register on the same day as the election, and that's all they require. So I'm seeing lots of people on the voter roll living in motels, and that's fine. People will temporarily do that, but they can't be living there for 3 years. It's just not possible for them to do that. I actually found 11 people living in a nudist resort campground, and at least 4 were Dems, 3 were Republicans, and 4 were Independents, which was good. So I'm glad that they're a very bipartisan group. But I can't imagine them sitting around the campfire in October and November deciding who to vote for because they've all gone. And so I see lots of this over and over again. And today I was looking at the voter roll. You can actually see a lot about Colorado by looking at the voter roll, so everyone should do it from time to time. I was looking at, I'm going out next week to one of the counties on the western slope, and I thought I'd look through their voter roll to see if anything jumped out at me. And someone's street address is a GPS coordinate, and it's the first time I've seen GPS coordinates. So I had to look it up. So I get in my latitude and longitude map, and I put it up, and it's in a canyon between Montrose and the Utah border where there aren't any houses. So the rules say that you have to have a residence to live in Colorado. And one of the forms said it has to be your sole residence, and another form says you can't have multiple residences. But Oprah Winfrey's voting from her 3rd or 4th house up in the mountains. We're finding lots of people who are here who perhaps shouldn't be here, and a lot of people popped up on the roll in October of 2020, and I understand there was a lot of passion around that, but I'm seeing this as a recurring theme. There might be 3 or 4 people in a house with 3 bedrooms, and then all of a sudden someone pops up in October of 2020, votes in 2020, doesn't vote in 2021, and I'm going to guess that the other 3 or 4 people in the house don't even know that that person has been added to the roll. So I'm seeing things like this which just concern me. But cleaning up the voter roll, I don't think it's very hard. I've been documenting my 10 plus in a house, and there are a lot of them. And if we started by going through all of the impossibly large number of people in a house and just checking, asking them if they're actually there, visiting them, visiting these offices, the 33 people who live in the DMV, they don't live there, and one of them gets their mail sent to Canada, and I looked up the address. It's a luxury 2-story. We send 43,000 ballots each election cycle out of state, not to military, but to out of state Coloradans, and we send more than 16,000 ballots every election cycle overseas. And I checked a few of the addresses in Australia, and some of them don't exist. We have 2 people we send ballots to in Vatican City. They don't exist because I checked them, the addresses. We apparently have 8 people who live in North Korea, which is impossible. We have 4 people apparently still live in Afghanistan we're sending ballots to. Just things that just don't make sense to me. And from a business perspective, we send 1 to Iran, but that's because someone doesn't know the difference between Ireland and Iran. So stuff like that, just things that would be fairly simple to fix. And all of those ballots that we send out and the automatic voter registration, every time someone's added to the voter roll, the poor old county clerk has to write to them and say, do you want to be on the voter roll? Put a stamped addressed envelope in there and hope that they hear back from them. If they don't hear back from them, they stay on the voter roll for 2 more federal cycles. So we just waste a lot of our time, resources, and money. The only objective of automatic voter registration is to keep growing the voter roll and provide opportunities for perhaps people to harvest ballots. I don't know. And I'm not going to, I know that at the universities there are a lot of students who come and go quite rapidly, so a lot of ballots end up at the universities. They get sold. There's an active trade in buying and selling ballots up there. Because of 2,000 Mules, I thought I'd check into some of our non-profits that work with the homeless groups. And homeless people have a right to vote here, but the Secretary of State has never put down guidelines as to how they should deal with the homeless people. So there was one homeless facility here in Lakewood, and I noticed that they had about 80 homeless clients, but half of their ballots were going to a PO box and half of them were going to the location where that homeless agency was. And that would make sense. You're visiting the agency, you pick up the ballot there, and that's ideally. So I wondered why half were going to the PO box. So then I cross-referenced the PO box through the voter roll because I can search on mailing addresses. And I found that in addition to that one homeless agency, there were 3 here in Denver who were randomly sending ballots to that PO box. Another one in Jefferson County that was using that PO box. 28 houses were sending ballots to that PO box, 4 motels, and then there were 5 homeless locations. I could tell, like a parking lot, a median strip, a library, someone lives in a library, and stuff that made sense to me in the sense of homeless people have to have a location. No GPS coordinates, but at least the location. So I'm wondering, the person who has the key to that, and one of the houses was in Pueblo, So the person who has the key to that PO box, I don't know how they get around distributing all those ballots to all those people, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. But to me, it looks a little bit suspicious. So these are some of the things that I'm finding that anyone can find if they look. And I'm surprised that people haven't looked at the voter roll, perhaps like I have. It takes me a long time on my computer to download the spreadsheet and look at it, but the one today with the GPS was, again, a first for me. I'm excited to find another GPS coordinate. And again, I can't find it. I look at the Google Earth and it's just canyons. It's just rocks. But perhaps they live in a tent in a canyon. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, so you always have to have a street address, a permanent residence. Not that it's permanent for a lot of people. And should an in-state tuition or an out-of-state tuition be allowed to vote? That's a legal question. I'd love to discuss that with the incoming Attorney General. But we really need the House and the Senate back so we can change some of these silly laws and bring sensibility back to the state. So that's me. So any other questions? I do have to stop.